end this genocide, this manipulation and corruption? What if the very thing that could cure all this madness was love in your hearts and the infectious positivity that you emit? What if you could stand up for the truth without care for the hate that you would receive for it? What if we were sent here on this earth for this very purpose? To change the world. Changing the world isn't as hard as we've been led to believe. It starts small. It starts with an itch to break through from the mundane. To inspire one person at a time by looking inward and radiating with purpose. Showing love to all humanity. Spreading positivity and waking up minds. Raising our consciousness and inviting others to do the same so we can rid the world of these corrupt leaders and rulers and corporations making money off of each and every one of our lives. It's time. Let's bring the system to its knees.
I got a song. Sure.
Good evening, everyone.
Hey.
My name's Tom Burke. I live here in Grand Rapids. I want to talk to you about war and repression. For many of you, you're a few years younger than me. I was born during the Vietnam War, and I grew up in a household and a community where, you know, not lots, but some of our neighbors went to that war. At least 2 of them died in that war. And our local church was actually kind of an anti-war church, even though it was a very blue-collar, ethnic suburb of Chicago, you know. And eventually, when Kent State happened and Jackson State happened in Mississippi, where they killed students at home, besides all the other repression happening in the late 60s, early 70s, the people where I lived also started to go out and march. After Kent State and Jackson State, my little grade school marched. The teachers were chasing us around the neighborhood. That was the best lesson of elementary school for us. But today, many of you have lived your whole lives under war. If you were born after 1991, you know, the U.S. has constantly been at war in the Middle East, as well as places like the Philippines and Colombia. They're secret wars. But for the people in those countries, the peasants and the workers and the progressive people, the nationalist people of those countries, you know, if you're patriotic, you're a target of the U.S. They want to repress you. And why? Because of what he said. The corporations from the U.S. and European countries and Japan, they want to get into your country and exploit your people, take your natural resources, rob your lives, you know. They steal your culture and repress your culture at the same time. So that's what the U.S. is up to. It's an empire in decline. The American century only lasted 50 years. I, for one, am happy it was cut off short, and it's not coming back. This is an empire in decline. It's going down. And so what happens then? Well, they bring back repression, political repression. In some ways, the repression from the 60s didn't end, but some of it got pushed back in the 80s and 90s for a while, you know. There were court rulings and the protest movements kept it at bay. But after 9/11, all the repressive stuff came back. Well, not everyone, but the vast majority of Congress, they wanted those laws back in place. And the reason why? Because they're trying to hold on to what they got in terms of the empire. The rich people, Wall Street, they want to rule this country. They don't want us to have any participation or democracy. So I got to tell you, I'm one of 23 people in the Midwest known as the Anti-War 23. 4 years ago in September, on the 24th of September, 7 of us, well, there's 9 people, but 7 homes were raided in Chicago and Minneapolis. Here, I went out of my house to go write the press release to denounce the raids, and I figured out right over here by the fish ladder, I figured out that the FBI was following me. So years of paranoia finally paid off. It was finally real for me, you know. So I drove over here where my wife works, and the FBI, they came right in, up on me in a secure parking lot. You know, they really drive like you see it on TV. So they jumped out and said they wanted to talk to me, and my wife happened to come out at that time, and they gave us subpoenas to a grand jury. And a grand jury is a thing where you're in the room with the prosecutor and the hand-picked grand jurors, many of whom come from government worker backgrounds, police and military backgrounds. I'm not saying that it's a conspiracy, but that's who they tend to draw to those grand juries, you know? And so a prosecutor has a good chance of convincing the grand jury that there should be a trial against you. So the FBI said, we're giving you subpoenas because of material support for terrorism in Colombia and Palestine, and we're investigating you. And that investigation went on, as far as we know, up until September of this year. But the 23 of us, we're all solid, good people. We told the grand jury, we're not going. We're sticking together. We're part of a bigger movement that's going to wrap its arms around us and support us, and we refuse to participate. And so the grand jury hasn't met, as far as we know, since then. But they won't tell us because they meet in secret, you know? And they won't tell us it's over because apparently that's a secret too. We have a government that likes to tell lots of secrets. Now, why is that important to know? Well, because to carry out their wars abroad, they have to have repression at home. And to have the war on terror, they have to target Arabs and Muslims. And then they try to expand it to anti-war activists, no matter what nationality or religious view you hold. So that's why they're coming after wider groups of people. And many of you probably know this from your own experiences anyway. So today I went to a trial in Detroit of Rasmea Oda, and I have flyers to give you. She worked with us for the last 20 years in Chicago. She's a Palestinian-American woman. She organizes Arab and Muslim women in Chicago. She's won many awards for organizing there, from religious groups, civic groups. She's well recognized throughout the Middle East. In 1969, Rasmea was arrested by an Israeli military occupation in the West Bank. She was arrested, tortured. I heard this not in the courtroom, but in the hearings before the court. They won't allow what I'm telling you to be told during the trial, so it's important for you to know. She was tortured, she was raped with a broomstick, she was electrocuted. Her father was brought in, and they tried to force him to rape her. He refused. They beat him until he was unconscious, and at that point she agreed to sign a confession, because she thought they were going to kill him. And they do kill prisoners. There's 7,000 political prisoners right now in Palestine, including hundreds of children. That's what the military occupation means to them. So Rasmea spent 10 years convicted for a bombing of a grocery store. Now, when you're occupied, you have a right to resist. And it's not just a moral thing, it's a legal right. The UN recognizes it. If the US supports you, they'll recognize it. If they don't support you, they're probably behind the occupation. So that's how that works. But you have a right to resist. And Rasmea is certainly a woman who resists. She's actually pretty symbolic of the Palestinian people. She's very resilient, she's very tough, she's outspoken, and she's willing to do things to put her life on the line to end the repression of her people. So in the court, what they're doing is they're going after her for a violation when she immigrated here and got her citizenship. And I won't go on and on, but it's a really uphill battle because the judge narrowed very much what the court trial can be about and what the defense can be about. They can't talk about what was done to her by a military occupation government. They can only talk about her being convicted. The judge himself kept asking the jurors when he was doing the process to pick the jurors. He kept talking about the bombing. So much so that one of the jurors said, "Judge, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can you tell me what the charges are again? Because I keep getting confused because all you keep talking about is a bombing." Right? And the judge keeps saying, "Well, we're not here to talk about that." But that's all he can talk about. So it kind of prejudices people. But the defense attorney today he caught them out. The prosecution's having a hard time. It's still really going to be hard to get a hung jury, let alone the dismisses, of not guilty. But we're going every day. If anyone wants to go with us, we're going tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. You got to get up early to get to court. And there's other people here who went today. You can talk to them. So please come out, support Russ Mayawota. They really wanted the porter because of her effective organizing in this country against war and repression. And you all saw what Israel did this summer to Gaza. We got to put an end to these wars. And it's not Israel alone. It's the U.S. that uses them and backs them and funds them every day to make this stuff happen. We got to help the empire to come to an end quicker. So keep organizing and let's go on a march.
Right. All right. I think well, do you want to say a few words, or we can do a few after the march too?
Yeah, let's get moving.
We'll practice some chants. Think of some chants too. All right, if you guys are loud, give it
Wave
to
the
us,
flags.
Hello? Woo! Alright, this goes out to all of you guys, everyone out here, real quick. First of all, when you think about what we're fighting against, and what we're for, some of us out there are anarchists, some of us want to fix the democracy that we're in, some of us want something completely different. But just remember that even though we will all have different outcomes, we're all fighting the same war against the elites, the corporations. Each of us is a single flame in a giant forest fire of a war between the elites and ourselves. And I just want to say, hold true to yourself and hold true to the goodness and what you believe in. Because temptation will come and it will knock you down. And evil exists out in the world, and we'll never be rid of it. But just know to yourself that this war is fought, and once it becomes